All right, this is the part where we talk about things we've learned, questions we have for each other. Who's got stories tonight? I haven't got any stories. No questions? No answers? I'm waiting for a question. Who's got a story? Anybody learned anything? Read anything? You gonna have me die up here?
Someone talked about the differences between acidic vitamin C and the non-acidic vitamin C.
And the answer is?
Well, ester C is actually a mixture of oxidized and reduced vitamin C. So, but acidic vitamin C is just plain ascorbic acid, and that's the least expensive vitamin C that you can buy and that manufacturers can buy. So when you go out and buy cheap vitamin C tablets, they're often made with ascorbic acid. And the problem with an ascorbic acid tablet is that if it sits up against the wall of your stomach, it can burn a very nice hole. So there's a huge promotion of mineral ascorbates, sodium ascorbate, calcium ascorbate, magnesium ascorbate. Did I say potassium or sodium? Which one did I say? Yeah. And some people even produce zinc ascorbate and mix it into these mixtures. And the advantage of those is that they don't burn a hole in your stomach. So there are also time-release vitamin C supplements that are out there. So what I generally take myself is ascorbic acid capsules, which is vitamin C powder, ascorbic acid powder, when I'm eating food. So if I'm taking it during a meal, it's acidic and it helps me digest. And then if I want to take vitamin C between meals, I buffer it, use vitamin C salts. And I don't take any ester C, but I figure my body makes some of it on the way in anyway. But if you're running a fever, you'll probably make plenty of your own anyway. Anything else?
Years ago, there was this company called Vitamin Research Products in Mountain View. They actually still exist in Nevada, I think. And they sold a product called Mag C, which was ascorbic acid buffered with, was it magnesium oxide? I make my own version of Mag C. I buy the regular ascorbic acid and I mix it with magnesium orotate, which you can get from Beyond a Century. This is all vitamin powder because really capsules are very expensive. So at the quantities I'm taking vitamin C, it's much more economic to buy vitamin powders. And so, for example, you can buy a pound of the cheap ascorbic acid from Trader Joe's for $12. And then you can buy some magnesium orotate for about the same price. And that'll buffer about 50 pounds or 30 pounds of vitamin C, something like that. Doesn't take much, but it really does take the acidity down. So, back to Stevie.
I use milk of magnesia to neutralize my vitamin C. And if sodium isn't a problem, and it isn't for me, baking soda makes a good vitamin C neutralizer. Yeah. So what I find is that if I just dissolve vitamin C in water and drink it, I'll notice an acidification effect, that my aversion to the acidity of the vitamin C will slowly creep up over time and increase over time. But if I only partially neutralize it with a small amount of milk of magnesia, or magnesium oxide is the powdered form, milk of magnesia is a liquid, typically you buy it in a drugstore, used as an antacid and laxative, yes. And I only need to partially neutralize the vitamin C, so that instead of it being tart like lemon juice, it's tart like orange juice, just weakly acidic, and then I really like that. It actually tastes better to me over time than fully neutralized, which tends to be chalky or salty or minerally.
Yeah, I just saw a couple of recent articles about taking vitamins, and the conclusions were that the vitamins you're taking are a waste of time. They're not going to keep you healthier, and they recommend you get healthy from eating the food. A lot of vegetables and a lot of fruit, and the long-lived societies, they live to be 100 years old, and they eat their vegetables and their fruit, and they take no vitamins. And the Americans take all these vitamins, and they die early. What's the conclusion?
From what I know, what you eat is dependent on the soil it comes from.
A recent study that just came out, and it was interesting you just mentioned that. There's a fellow by name of Michael Goldfield. Look him up. He's an MD psychiatrist in San Mateo. He just printed out about 40 pages of a new study that was done by JAMA, Journal of American Medicine, and it showed that they gave 5,000 physicians a multivitamin and another 5,000 no vitamins. The ones with the multivitamins had less incidence of cancer and heart disease. It's a brand new study, and if you're interested, I'll get you the name of the journal and the month and the date, and you can Google it. And this is recent studies, and it was done by physicians.
My comment on that is short. The preponderance of research studies show that utilizing vitamins and minerals and nutrients supplementally are beneficial across all categories of disorders. That's what the preponderance of the research studies show. And that is the fact. I don't know who sponsored that study, but
In all the health magazines I get.
okay, all right. All right.
And they say the vegetables have a combination of the nutrients, and they need a combination to get the health benefits. Just taking one part of maybe 30 nutrients, it doesn't do the job like eating the food.
I absolutely agree with you. The nutrients from foods have synergistic effects. In fact, some of them, we don't even know all of the synergistic effects that are in the nutrients from foods. That's absolutely true. But if we lived in a perfect situation where we had perfect soil, crops rotated perfectly, no pesticides, then that would be another factor. But we don't, and so all the research studies, the preponderance of research studies do show that utilizing nutritional supplementation is not only important but necessary for the average person.
Let me amplify on what Doug just said. The really important thing is whenever you see, well, I just saw something, you are always looking for the preponderance of the evidence, not an article that I saw yesterday or another one you're going to see next week or the one you're going to see next month. It's always, what is the preponderance of the evidence? The smartest nutritionist I ever knew was Robert Crayon. The guy had a completely encyclopedic mind. It used to blow me away. He knew all the literature. He said, after doing complete literature research, he said there is no evidence, zero evidence, for the proposition if you just eat a healthy diet, you will get all the nutrients you need. There's no evidence for that. It's just something that's known. And then the other thing is, over the years, I've talked to various agronomists. In fact, I talked to this one guy who was a real expert in bat guano, and he used to sell to Whole Foods. And he confirmed what I knew from driving through Salinas for 8 years, that the soils are depleted. There's no way you're going to get your minerals and your vitamins from the soils as the way crops are grown today. So you're just not going to get it. So food is not going to give you everything you need. And then the last thing is, when you talk about these societies, whether it's in Peru or it's in Russia or wherever, there is no really good evidence that these people all live to 100 years old. You know, when they actually do the teeth analysis, they find out actually they look like they're 100 years old, but they're really 60. And the average age in this country, despite all the crap that we're eating, the average age in this country is probably 78 to 80. So pretty much everything you said, yeah, I would contend is wrong. Okay, Journal of American, the JAMA, 2000, it was November, I'll give you the exact date, November 14, 2012. It was a study, a clinical study by physicians showing that it prevents cancer, multivitamin. And there's also another study that also prevents heart disease. This is so go on JAMA and look up November 14, 2012.
My research tells me that minerals are some of the most important things you can get, and the soils in America are highly depleted. One of the things that I do when I go to a farmer's market, me personally, is I look for off-the-wall sellers. I'm looking for people who have small farms, different soils, and so I buy from different guys all the time, trying to diversify it, because all your product, the nutrition, comes out of the soil, and that's kind of my philosophy.
Definitely in terms of minerals in plants, it all comes out of the soil, and it turns out that it's not just an issue of soil depletion, although that's certainly taking place. It's also an issue of most commercial growers accelerate the growth of their plants. They put nitrate and phosphate and potash into the soil, which causes the plants to grow twice as fast, and so their mineral uptake is half of what it normally is. So the slower the plant grows, the higher the mineral content, and the faster the plant grows, the lower the mineral content. The faster the plant grows, the more money they can make. So of course, you get depleted crops from that issue as well. The issue of whether or not taking a single nutrient is beneficial or not depends upon your nutritional state. So if you take niacin and you've got plenty of niacin in your diet and in your body, that niacin probably won't do much for you at all. But if you happen to have a niacin deficiency, a B3 deficiency, it can make all the difference in the world. So the absence of a vitamin or a mineral is like the presence of a drug in your system. A hole in nutrition breaks down the machinery of your body. You're missing a gear in the cogs of your body. Whereas you put a drug in, the drug goes in and you know, damages something and slows it down. And it's not that those aren't necessarily, you know, drugs can't be therapeutic, and you know, vitamin deficiencies can't be therapeutic. I mean, there's all kinds of things that people do in terms of treatment of cancer with chemotherapeutic agents that will, let's say, inhibit folic acid or antagonize folic acid. And because folic acid is a proliferative agent, if you block it and induce a folic acid deficiency, that might have an effect on the cancer. But the whole issue of whether or not people have a nutritional deficiency for which the nutrients will be beneficial, there were 2 studies that were done back in, was it the 80s? Schoenthaler in California and Roberts and somebody in England, where they studied school kids, grade school kids, or high school kids, and they would give these kids vitamins, and they would look at what happened to their academic performance and their IQs, and it turned out that there was a 3.4 point IQ increase in these kids. And both studies were done simultaneously, and neither group knew the other one was doing it, and they came up with exactly identical results. Well, when they analyzed who was, you know, they did a distribution pattern, they found that 2/3 of the kids had no increase at all, and 1/3 of the kid had 10-point IQ increases. So that tells me that 1/3 of children in California and in Britain are eating food that's has enough poor nutrition that the nutrient deficiencies are actually impairing their brain function. So that gives you an idea of the relative odds in that one particular population. Now, if you're going out of your way to eat good food and you're following a Paleolithic diet and you're eating, you know, nutrient-dense foods like, you know, liver and stuff like that as part of your you know, eating a lot of vegetables, you might not have widespread deficiencies like in the general population, but you can look at numbers for magnesium deficiency anywhere from 40% to 90% of the population in the United States. Vitamin D levels, just atrocious. What's another one? B6 deficiencies are very widespread. Some people are saying 80%. Yeah. So, typically most of the B complex vitamins, it runs about 1/3 of the population with overt deficiencies. So this isn't just an isolated kind of thing. And if you play the odds, where are you going to put your money? What's the best investment? It's like buying insurance to cover your butt. Well, taking a supplement, a broad spectrum multivitamin mineral supplement, is probably the best investment of money, because you're spending, what, 5 cents a day? Maybe if you get a really high-end one, you're spending 25 cents a day. I mean, you're going to go bankrupt really fast with that kind of an investment.
You also have them in gummy bears. Absorbed immediately.
The doctor that did the Framingham study, he started out as a non-believer, and when he finished the study, he was taking supplements himself.
Yeah, I'd like to emphasize vitamin D. It's not in food. It's in food if it's added, but I think it's the grassroots health group in San Diego, associated with UC San Diego, says that the average person, like I guess us, needs 8,000 units a day. So if you believe the government stuff that says you need 400 or 600, no, you need 8,000. And that's to get in the middle of a healthy range. And you're not going to get it in food.
I can run a spiel. Yeah, I mean, there's a group of people who have been following one of what I consider the most brilliant minds of the last century in medicine, which was Dr. Emmanuel Ravisi, who have been recommending doses of vitamin D in the 5,000 unit range as a matter of routine for about 60 years. And, following up with that. And they characterize, they deal in the area of what they call metabolic balance, having to do with two different systems that are kind of polar opposite of each other. And they find that vitamin D supplementation is one of the best ways of correcting a particular kind of metabolic imbalance. And typically it's 5,000 units is what they commonly recommend, and they never recommend anything less than 5,000. Sometimes they'll recommend more. But part of the message that you get from the ancestral diet people or the Weston A. Price people or the Paleolithic people is that we're losing touch with our roots. We're losing touch with our roots in terms of plants growing in the ground and depleted soils and, with fertilizers. We're losing track in terms of our exposure to things like light. We don't go out in the world and expose ourselves to light anymore. We live indoors. We work indoors. We wake up in weird hours. We stay up late at night. We look at computer screens right before we go to bed. We do all of this kind of stuff that we're no longer in a natural environment. And you have to expect that there's going to be some risk to taking that kind of activity. And according to Pottinger and multi-generational cat studies, this isn't just that we're poisoning ourselves. We're also the deficits that we run accumulate over time. There's epigenetic mechanisms that multiply this over time, and each generation takes the next generation down another notch. So this is one of the costs of civilization. And so part of the strategy, the wisdom of doing this kind of group and looking at these kinds of issues is, okay, I'm not going to go out in my backyard naked at sunrise and sunset and spend 20 minutes in the sun at noon to get my vitamin D. So how do you compensate with that? Can you set up light systems indoors? Can you take vitamin D? And maybe our guesses aren't right. So there's a lot of people. I mean, one of the theories that I just heard last year from the Weston A. Price conference was Stephanie Seneff, who was proposing that the health benefits of sunlight aren't just manifested through vitamin D. That's certainly a mechanism, and everybody talks about it. But she was proposing that sun exposure also converted cholesterol into cholesterol sulfate, where that would allow the cholesterol to move through the body and distribute through the body, whereas if you're in darkness and you just take vitamin D, your cholesterol may not have that kind of mobility and may end up with some kind of cholesterolemia kind of disorder. And these are the kinds of things we should be aware of. So we're not just compensating by taking vitamin D, but we're also exposing ourselves to the right kind of light.
Pardon us for a little bit of over-the-counter technology stuff.
Steve, that's a good tangent where we all.
It's working? You know, a friend of mine owns U.S. Wellness Meats, John Wood, and he buys meat from Tasmania. And he tells me that the soil in Tasmania is like no other on earth. They don't have any pesticides, nothing. The cattle are probably the healthiest cattle on earth. And so, once again, soil is magic. It is really magic. And when you read, I read a couple of books about minerals and depletion. We've lost over 50% of our magnesium in the foods in the last 50 years.
You know, we're talking about vitamin D. Bill Grant, he's on the board here, and he gave a talk. He sponsored a talk by this doctor at the Commonwealth Club a few days ago, and he's written many papers on vitamin D. So I asked him, how many units you taken? He's only taken 3,000, Steve, and his level is 68. So I'm wondering why. He can take, I take 10,000. It's not that high. How can some people take lower doses and get such a high reading?
But he was also doing 50,000 once a week, every week, for a long period of time. Yeah, because we talk about it on the phone.
People are the lights off. People are different. They're different in so many different ways. You know, fat absorption, fat inhibition of fat absorption, metabolic rate, whether you're male or female, how much weight you're carrying, whether you're insulin resistant, you're B6 deficient. All of those things affect how your system reacts. Bill has been measuring his vitamin D levels, and he drove himself in his vitamin D up to what he thought was way too much.
And so he backed off, but he's doing sun and vitamin D, so that would suggest that the hybrid strategy might not be the same amount, but if he's absorbing more, or if you have dark skin instead of like white skin, or if you live in a polluted area where you've got more UV rays and you look down at the wall, you might take a higher dose, whereas if somebody lived out in the avenues in San Francisco, they can actually get vitamin D rays and see them.
That should sound better. Give that a try.
Yeah, a friend of mine is fair-skinned, and she gets out in the sun every day, and I suggested she take 10,000 a day. And after 3 months, her level is in the 20s. So I suggested that she go to the emulsified form, And after 3 months, it's still in the 20s. And I told her I'd ask to see what suggestion for people like that are kind of unusual. I think that's an unusual situation, don't you see?
I was wondering what's being made.
Well,
The
I
25
see-
minute actually.
I see a whole range. You know, most people will get good levels at 5,000. Most of the time, what I see is really small women only need 3,000. I never see anybody who needs less than 3,000. Never. But I am seeing more people who are needing more than 5,000, need 10,000, need 15,000. And I think some of that's an absorption problem. It could be a measurement problem because the labs are always changing their methodology. They're always tweaking the machines. So how much of this is a methodology problem and how much is an absorption problem? We're dealing with inflammatory bowel disease. At what time of the day are they taking the vitamin D? Because I recommend all my patients take fat soluble nutrients at the same upon the rising. So fish oil, vitamin D, vitamin E, vitamin K, CoQ10, phosphatidylserine should always be taken together because they get absorbed together. So it depends on the time of the day, it depends on the bowel absorption, depends on the habits, depends on the weight, and it may depend on the lab. And so you've got a bunch of these. What I am seeing though is I'm seeing a tendency for more people to require 10 and 15,000 to get up therapeutic levels.
2 more questions. Bill?
Okay. Yeah, well, you know, just to throw another factor into this problem here that we have with soils, for many years we had a wonderful Australian guy around. I can't remember his name right now, but I remember one time he gave a talk at Smart Life Forum, short report on the importance of fungi at the roots of plants and their ability to help the plant absorb nutrients.
Fulvic acid, which we're looking for.
Okay.
Fulvic acid is one of the magic things in plants.
Yeah, and so when you use pesticides and insecticides on the plants, just drench them, and they probably some residual in the soil, which they're probably looking for. You kill these fungi, and so even if the soils aren't completely depleted, then you have this additional problem that they can't do their thing and pick up the nutrients.
You actually alter the behavior of the plants when you put pesticides and those things.
Yeah.
Because the plant has a natural ability to defend itself.
Just for an interesting observation, for a historical reference, to read you something, the alarming fact is that foods, fruits, and vegetable grains now being raised on millions of acres of land that are no longer containing enough of certain minerals are starving us no matter how much of these we eat. Senate document 1936.
And it's gotten better?
So now the question is, do you want to take a 10-minute break or do you want to go off the panel? That answers that question.
Hi. Okay, would people like to take a 10-minute break and come back? Do you want to take a 10-minute break and then come back to the panel? Or do you want to just go straight into my announcements and then into the panel? Want to go straight into the panel after I blabble a little bit? Okay, here's the blabbling. Okay, my name is Susan Downs. We've had some changes on the board. Dave Asprey is now our chairman, so I'm filling in on the local things. I'd like to pass out my email address, so if you have any comments, suggestions, criticisms, that you can, email me. And so we want to be responsive so that, that we meet your needs. Second of all is we have a couple of positions if people want to volunteer. Our Laura Dominguez, who is doing our newsletter, unfortunately wants to step down. She'll continue with the website. So if anybody wants to volunteer to help with the newsletter, that would be helpful. And also, we're looking for another board member, so if anybody wants to think about that, they can. Now, well, you're getting my email, so if you've got any comments, you can either write it on that piece of paper or you can email me. So I just want to hear everything people want to say. Now, the next choice is the board thought it would be good to start at 6:30 because sometimes we get out and it's so late and, people need to go to sleep. and other people have trouble getting here at 6:30. So whichever way we do it, it'd be good for some and maybe not good for others. So we'd like to have a vote today, or a show of hands, as to how do people feel about starting at 6:30. Of course, I thought it would be better to have this vote more at 8 o'clock than at 7 o'clock, because at 7 o'clock, clearly 6:30 would win. So do people want to start the forum at 6:30, or would they want to keep it at... All in favor of 6:30, raise your hands. Okay, can we count? Does somebody want to count? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I count 19 hands. Okay, who wants to keep the forum starting at 7? Okay. 13.
Two.
15.
I got 2 votes,
I'm
right? 2 votes.
Counting Eric, our our videographer, it's 17. So. Well, that's going to be too. I think that's going to be too confusing. Because this way we can have the forum at 6:30, and then people, and start the speaker more at 7 or 7:15. Yes.
Are there any facility problems with that?
I don't know. We're getting here. I mean, you would have.
Like the videographer?
Yeah, Eric,
It
you
would
have
be easier
difficulties.
if I have that half an hour to set up.
The room?
Yeah. So can we get in here at 6 o'clock?
You have to check with.
Can we get in here at 6 o'clock?
I have no idea.
Can you get here at 6:30?
Yeah, you and I have had that conversation.
Yes, we have.
I said yes, but I don't know what the facilities of the...
Okay, we'll need to check that one out. Okay, we will.
I think they were objecting to staying too late.
Yeah, they have come up.
We'll check to see if we can get in here at 6 o'clock, and if that happens, we'll switch it to 6:30 and give you ample notice. Anyway, email me with any issues. Come up to me at the break. Want to make sure all your concerns are heard, and we're going to do the best we can. Okay. But we wanted to go straight into the panel, so I'll give this back to Tom here.